For as long as people have enjoyed bad movies for their comedy value, there has been the question, is it possible to make a movie that's so bad it's good on purpose? And in 2013, Birdemic 2 came along to answer that question. No. No, you can't. Tonight on Bad Reviews, Birdemic 2, The Resurrection. My name is Daniel Steckley, and my obsession is failure. I believe that the secrets to success lie in understanding the mistakes of the past. I'm on a mission to investigate the greatest flops, bombs, and busts in every form of media. From movies to television, music to video games, anime and comics too, the things I review are diverse, but they all have one thing in common. They've all had some very, very bad reviews. Yeah, you might not have even known there was a Birdemic 2. Unless, of course, you found this video by typing Birdemic 2 review into your search bar, in which case, yeah, you probably do know there was a Birdemic 2. And you might be thinking, oh, I see how they could do a Birdemic sequel. At the end of the first one, the birds just bugger off to sea, so maybe they just come back. I assure you, friends, the truth is so much stupider. If you couldn't tell by the stupid shit happening on your screen, Birdemic 2 is trying to be a joke. Some of the time, but only some of the time. You see, Birdemic 2 is still directed by James Nguyen, the self-proclaimed master of the romantic thriller trademark, and yeah, I guess it's hard to refute his claim to being the master of a genre he made up. You see, James Nguyen has aspirations to being the next Alfred Hitchcock, who he describes as the originator of the romantic thriller genre. Now, to my discredit, I haven't seen any Hitchcock films from beginning to end, though I have seen the first half of Psycho, and it's, not what I'd describe as romantic. In fact, Alfred Hitchcock made 30 films while in Hollywood, and Wikipedia classifies only 2 of them as partially belonging to the romance genre. It's a pretty major blind spot in this review that I haven't seen The Birds, but in any case, I'm not reviewing Birdemic Shock and Terror, I'm reviewing Birdemic 2. Birdemic 2 is a very strange creature. Very few irony cult movies get sequels at all, and they generally wind up being footnotes in the history of the first one, more an artifact of the cult than a legitimate attempt at a follow-up. And Birdemic 2 also has more going against it for sequel material. It's a romance movie and a disaster movie, both of which infamously make for difficult sequeling. And Birdemic 2 resolves these problems in maybe the most awkward way any movie ever has. Theoretically, James Nguyen retains full creative control of Birdemic 2. He's still credited as the director and the writer, but more than a few moments stink of the producers interfering to insert callbacks to the first movie, and sometimes just deliberate outright stupidity. But a lot of the film is still 100% James Nguyen.
I really think you should audition for the lead role of Kim.
Like the original Shock and Terror, Birdemic 2's plot is segmented into 2 halves. The first is a romance, and the second half is a thriller. The first half, the romance half, is the one that feels truest to the film's creative vision, and it's a creative vision that reflects very poorly on James Nguyen as a person.
With a look like yours, I'm sure one of these days you'll be discovered and make it big.
Thanks for the encouragement.
Birdemic 2 tells one of the sleaziest love stories ever put to film. This is a movie that romanticizes the casting couch. I'm not making that up.
This could be your breakthrough role into Hollywood. Your elusive Hollywood movie break.
Yes.
How about lunch tomorrow to celebrate your first major movie role?
Is this a pickup?
No, not at all.
I am exaggerating, slightly, but this is a movie where a director casts a young actress purely because he's attracted to her, and then leverages that to have sex with her. I mean, Birdemic also had a really weird wish fulfillment love story, but this is arguably rape. And we never see why they fall in love, we just have a montage of them tooling around on the beach.
I know I'm set for glory.
Attack of the Clones had a better written love story than this. This is fucking right out of the Sonichu playbook. And, like the original Birdemic, we don't see their relationship evolve at all past the sex scene. so that's really more out of the BioWare playbook. So, some of this would be clearer if I was doing a review of Birdemic first, but there's some really specific stuff I want to talk about when I do review Birdemic. But in case you haven't seen it, the plot to Birdemic 1 is really obvious wish fulfillment for James Nguyen as he saw himself when he made that movie, a software salesman. Birdemic 2, on the other hand, is shameless wish fulfillment for James Nguyen as he sees himself in the wake of Birdemic, a film director.
You know, last time I saw you was at your Sundance premiere of your movie Four Seasons, which, by the way, swept Sundance.
Oh, we had so much fun.
The film's protagonist, a movie director whose name I had to Google, even though I watched the movie yesterday and remembering movie character names is a skill I'm weirdly good at, but anyway, his name is Bill, after Billy Wilder, and he's an already successful film director who wants to make an independently financed film because he blames studio interference for the failure of his last film. The entire conversation is pure masturbation.
You know what, though? I'm still amazed that Four Seasons did so well and won all those awards at Sundance.
It was awesome.
And then, after that, you did that Hollywood film, In the Sand, right?
I wish I hadn't.
Why?
It bombed. Because I didn't have creative control. You know, the final cut. Look, some of Hollywood's greatest films are indies. Like Vertigo, Citizen Kane, and Psycho. Because they were produced independently. And the director had complete creative control and final cut.
Interesting.
As a movie about a director trying to make it big in Hollywood with an independent film riffing on the themes of old Hollywood, Birdemic 2 is one of the greatest acts of autofellatio ever put to film. Even the original wasn't this self-congratulatory, and it had a scene with a literal minute of self-congratulation.
Brilliant. You guys have worked hard, and you've all earned your stock option. Congratulations!
Which, of course, Birdemic 2 felt the need to reference.
We're making a movie!
Anytime Birdemic 2 tries to redo one of the funny bits from the first movie, it always does it in a sort of half-hearted or misbegotten way. Like, the clapping bit and fighting off the birds with coat hangers both sort of feel like James Nguyen on his own trying to reference bits from the first movie that people liked without really getting why people liked them, whereas stuff like making the sound editing on the first line shitty
Hi.
Hi.
feels like it was either insisted upon or added without James Nguyen's approval, because making the sound editing shitty on purpose isn't a joke, it's sabotage. This brings us to one of the weirder elements of Birdemic 2's production. The sound editing is somehow much, much worse than the first ones. Like, yeah, okay, Birdemic has famously bad sound editing on the very first line, but it quickly gets decent. Birdemic 2's sound editing is just awful, and the little bit of ADR they do is sloppy as hell. There are scenes where it's hard to hear what the characters are saying over the wind, and sometimes the music is mixed too loud, and neither of these are problems that Birdemic 1 had.
Hey guys, what I missed?
A woman was attacked by a giant jumbo jellyfish.
Really?
It's part of a broader problem with the film, which is that it's hard to tell what's a reference to the original and what's just the way James Nguyen writes stories. In both movies, the thriller half revolves around driving from place to place and failing to rescue people. Is that an homage to the first one, or is that just failure of imagination? It doesn't help that I could find almost no information about the production of Birdemic 2, so I don't know what the creative process on this film was. I can't say with certainty that any part of it was forced on James Nguyen. It's just that certain scenes are pretty merciless goofs on the original, and some parts are just fucking stupid.
Something stung me.
What stung you?
A jellyfish.
A jellyfish?
Yes, a giant jumbo jellyfish.
Hurry, somebody call an ambulance. Call 911.
Yeah, I know. Birdemic 1 was also a very stupid film, but it had a singularity of purpose. Global warming is causing birds to attack for some reason, maybe bird flu, and that's it. A very odd and improbable understanding of science, but whatever, you could get a decent X-Files episode out of it. Birdemic 2 shits the bed aggressively and repeatedly. Now global warming causes red rain that brings fossil birds back to life, and also fossil cavemen, and it also raises zombies from the dead, but it doesn't bring back the mammoths, or the ground sloths, or the saber-toothed cats, because that would be very expensive. Yeah, you heard me right. The red rain brings people back to life, and for some reason, the reason is memes. The more recently dead people come back as zombies. Apparently these people were buried in their t-shirts and jeans. Also, they decide to leave Cowgirl for dead on the basis that
She was bitten by that zombie. If we would have brought her, she would have infected all of us.
why would you assume that? Like, the stupidest Birdemic 1 ever got was the dive-bombing birds and the acid-pissing birds, but just to have zombies appear for one scene, and one scene only, is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in a movie, and not in a fun way. Like, they knew they were making something stupid, I have to assume, because just having zombies appear for a single scene just doesn't jive with the creative sensibilities of the first film. Birdemic 1 is a creatively sparse film. It has a handful of ideas, and it stretches them past the breaking point of where they're interesting. Birdemic 2 throws a new idea at the wall with every scene, and the result is a completely incoherent film. And this is hard to show in a review, but where Troll 2's incoherence makes it feel like a weird dream, Birdemic 2's incoherence makes it feel like a movie deliberately trying to feel like a weird dream, but not in the way that a Jodorowsky film would. Like, Birdemic 2 is incredibly calculated in its off-the-wall weirdness, and it robs the movie of any charm the original had. Because what Birdemic 1 and Jodorowsky both have is complete conviction in their ideas, and Birdemic 2 clearly knows it's full of shit. This is one of the core problems of making a sequel to a movie like Birdemic. Incompetently made good-bad movies are fun and charming because they're oblivious to their failings. So, when you're gonna make a sequel, you generally speaking have two options. Let's call them Option Deadliest Prey and Option Samurai Cop 2. Option Deadliest Prey is to make a movie that's a completely genuine sequel to the original, with maybe a few bits chosen to be jokier than the original was, but otherwise trying to make something like a legitimate follow-up to the original film. The main risk of this is that you might just make something that's not very compelling. After all, there are thousands of bad movies, only a few are bad in a way that's worth watching. Option Samurai Cop 2 is to make something totally over-the-top wonky bonkers, to take the trappings of the original film and to make a straight-up comedy with it. The risk of this is that you have no refuge in detached irony. You need to make a legitimately good comedy film. Birdemic 2 falls somewhere between these two options. It takes the wackiness further over the top than the original did, but it also keeps the plot structure completely intact, like beat for beat. The first half is a completely legit James Nguyen film with a few callbacks to the original, but it's otherwise a completely straight-faced presentation. Then the second half just completely jumps the rails, and Birdemic 1 also jumped the rails, but at least it still felt like the same film. In Birdemic 1, the beginning of the second half finds the characters in the same place they were at the end of the first half, at the hotel, whereas Birdemic 2 kind of awkwardly transitions from a love scene at a hotel to the movie shoot presumably the next day because the same characters are present in both scenes, and it's a little thing, but it does help to break the coherence of the movie.
Sunset Dreams, scene 27, take 3.
Stand by, and action.
To love somebody is to want to be with that person. Forever. Forever?
And cut. That was good.
Birdemic 1 has a tone shift from the first half to the second half, obviously, but because both halves are played completely straight, you can sort of roll with it. Whereas Birdemic 2 awkwardly lurches from a po-faced movie industry story into a farcical disaster movie where the characters might as well all be completely different people because they just become anonymous gunslingers. Again, this is going to be something that I'm going to have to touch on in a proper review of Birdemic, but a major flaw they both share is total lack of continuity of character from the first half of the movie to the second. And this is something that goes beyond changing genre. I mean, you can do that. You can make that work. But the first halves of both of these movies are character-driven dramas which ostensibly exist to develop these characters and their relationships, but then they have zero bearing on the second half of the film. For example, the first half of Birdemic 2 introduces the characters of Tony, Rod and Natalie's adopted son, and Natalie's mom. These characters do not appear in the second half of the film at all, and at no point do any characters express concern for their safety. I'm not trying to bring this up as like a plot hole nitpick. This isn't CinemaSins. This is storytelling 101. You could have easily used either of those characters as something to give Rod and Natalie motivation, to give them some direction to do something, so that the second half of this movie doesn't just consist of driving around scenes that you could cut up and put in any order. This comparison is far from fair, but really, look at the second half of either Birdemic movie compared to, let's say, Mad Max Fury Road. On a superficial level, they both follow the same kind of structure. You're driving from place to place, running away from enemies in an apocalyptic scenario. But everything that happens in Fury Road happens because a character has a goal or a desire they're trying to realize, and at all times you know what the characters want and how they're planning to accomplish it, and the way that the characters play off each other has huge implications for the plot. This isn't about Hollywood special effects, it's about basic principles of storytelling. Just because you're writing action, it doesn't mean that character stops mattering. It really shows the shallowness of James Nguyen's ability to write characters that as soon as the movie deviates from his love story template, that all the characters become interchangeable. I mean, fuck! We get a new protagonist with like 15 minutes left in the film. Yeah, this fucking random Asian dude, the screenwriter of the movie within the movie, suddenly becomes the protagonist with like 3 scenes left to go.
I saw in the news last week that thousands of birds had died and fallen out of the sky in Arkansas. I wonder if this has something to do with that.
Birds falling out of the sky?
Yeah, and even more birds had died in a small northern coastal California town called Half Moon Bay.
Half Moon Bay?
And what's even stranger is the rain in Half Moon Bay had turned red.
Strange and weird things are happening in the environment right now.
Guys, can we just change the subject? Jaws happens to be one of my favorite movies.
And then the birds kill him, and then the movie just ends, because Sunset Boulevard. I'm an auteur, damn it. Like, literally, James Nguyen has a cameo in this movie, and he's credited as auteur. Even though, non-speaking cameos aren't usually supposed to get credited, but whatever. And I know I already addressed the sleaziness of it, but the love story just sucks. There's no reason for these characters to fall in love. I mean, we know the director just wants to fuck her, and she might want to reciprocate that for the purposes of getting the role, but that's not a love story, that's a fucking porn genre. And what makes it so fucking sleazy is that Bill is such a clear stand-in for James Nguyen that it's pretty obvious that this casting couch romance is something that he would like for himself. And that is really, really gross.
Bill, do you like what you see?
Like, I don't want to armchair psychologize James Nguyen here. That's what I want to do in the Birdemic review. But he really lays his insecurities bare in Birdemic 1 and 2. Like, you can really tell how he wants to see himself. Handsome and accomplished without much effort. He wants to romance a pretty little blonde girl without much of a personality, and he wants to be assertive and confident in combat. Never do we see Rod or Bill afraid of the birds or outright saying that their plan is to run away from them to somewhere safe. Both charge headlong into danger because presumably that's how James Nguyen would like to imagine himself behaving in that scenario. It's just such a bland and honestly kind of pathetic fantasy. Neil Breen makes movies where he's the most dangerous man alive. A jet pilot, computer hacker, war hero, bioterrorist for hire. James Nguyen makes movies where he's himself but 30% more successful and with a girlfriend. In fact, I kind of hope James Nguyen doesn't have a girlfriend for her sake, because he very clearly has a type that he seems to feel is unactualized. In fact, if you think about it, it's kind of an amusing reversal of your stereotypical nerdy white guy who has a thing for Asian girls, but I digress. So, is Birdemic 2 worth a watch? Well, first off, only if you've seen the first one, and even then, it's a definite downgrade in terms of charm, though maybe an upgrade in terms of number of laughs. Like, Birdemic 1 isn't a particularly highlight-rich film, it's more about the experience of the incompetence of the entire thing, where Birdemic 2 is more driven by having a few jokey moments. Like, there is one bit in particular where the sending up of the original movie is really, really funny, and I won't spoil it for you, but it's in the La Brea tar pit scene, and you'll know it when you hear it. When I rewatched Birdemic 2 for this review, I actually found myself enjoying it more than I remembered. Maybe it was because I was more prepared for the tonal weirdness going in, but its contrivedness was a little less off-putting the second go-round. The sleaziness of the love story, though, was exactly as off-putting as I remembered it being, and if you aren't really interested in slogging through half a movie where a creepy sexual power imbalance is presented as romance, then you might want to give Birdemic 2 a skip.
I'm gonna help make you a movie star.
What can I do to ever repay you for helping me out with my movie career?
Oh, a lot.
But if you are a fan of the original and you want to see what a sequel would be like, or you want to get more insight into the mind of its creator, or if you're just running out of accessible bad movies to watch, then yeah, I can recommend Birdemic 2. It's a slightly more watchable movie than the first one, because it has a somewhat brisker pace and a shorter runtime, but its floundering plot and general lack of charm make Birdemic 2's 79 minutes feel significantly longer than that. And it's time for a new segment on the show. Now, I don't want to have a numbered rating system on bad reviews because ultimately my recommendations are more complex than that can allow for, but to help with recommending bad movies for viewing or for a bad movie night, I have devised a 4-point rating system I am calling the Suckville Scale for measuring the spiciness of a bad movie. Having a Suckville index of 1 means mild heat. These are the most approachable, most accessible bad movies that anybody should be able to enjoy. Troll 2 retroactively has a Suckville index of 1. Having a Suckville index of 2 means medium heat. These are movies that might take a bit of a stronger palate to enjoy. There could be serious structural or technical problems with the film that make it at least somewhat unenjoyable to watch, but with rewarding moments for a viewer who can take the heat. A Suckville index of 3 indicates intense heat. These are movies that are a genuine struggle to watch from beginning to end, and may simply not be entertaining to watch just by yourself. The Suckville scale doesn't really go up to 4. The next level on the scale is death. A Suckville index of death indicates a film which is profoundly unpleasant to watch. Movies this spicy should absolutely not be watched by yourself. They always require having friends watching the movie riffing with you to get any kind of enjoyment out of the experience of watching it. Unless you are a truly damaged individual. A Suckville rating of death usually amounts to a non-recommendation of the film. So with that explained, Birdemic 2 clocks in on the Suckville scale with an index of 2. Pretty accessible, with a good number of funny moments, but also kind of a slog and with some seriously off-putting elements. If you have a taste for bad movies, you'll probably get something out of Birdemic 2, but there are pretty seriously diminishing returns from the original. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at Batman and Robin to see if it truly lives up to its reputation as one of the worst superhero movies ever made. Until then, I'm Daniel Steckley, and this has been a bad review. I'd like to take a moment to thank by name Adam Ali, Ian Wright, and Lyle Groniger for being such generous Patreon backers. If you'd like your name read aloud at the end of the show or featured in the credits, consider backing Bad Reviews at www.patreon.com/DStecks. And to those who are already backing me, thank you all for your support.
You don't know what you're saying. Perhaps you've not been told. I don't think it's because you're growing cold. But maybe. So please take a bow as I raise my glass. Here's to the president of wishful thinking. Here's to the king.